Okay. I think we're good to go now. Jeez. Is it just me or does this happen to everybody? Okay, let me wait and see if Kenny and at least Alfred. Okay, so Kenny's there. Excuse the coffee. Hello, Kenny. How you doing? Excuse the coffee, but I haven't had any at all today so far. So, all right. Been busy trying to get some stuff happening. All right. So, hello everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, and welcome to episode. I love Jeet Kune broadcast episode number 22. This is the one about Jeet Kune, what happened, and this is part 2. Last week when we left off, we were talking about we had talked about the beginning of the JKD seminar industry, as I called it, right? I had explained that what we had at that time was different people with different levels of knowledge and understanding of Jeet Kune, with different opinions as to what should be taught and how it should be taught, right? And so that led to let's call it the so-called division, right, in the JKD world, with the whole original Jeet Kune versus Jeet Kune concepts, right? That kind of deal, a stupid deal if there ever was one, right? During that time, I know from what I trained and with whom I trained that some people seemed more focused on a limited number of techniques and more emphasis on getting really good at that limited number of techniques, right? Other people were focused on adding, let's say, trapping skill to your basic kickboxing skill. And then even other people, in addition to the trapping and the kickboxing, were adding grappling techniques and what have you, right? There were some people who were blending their Kali empty hands with their Junfan empty hands, so that gave it a little bit of a different flavor also, right? So even though nobody was teaching identical stuff, there still seemed to be this connecting thread, as we like to call it, that it could allow you, if you were on the receiving end of that, it could allow you to put it all together, so to speak, for yourself, which I'm sure you'd agree is part of what is supposed to happen in the JKD world, right? Oh, I forgot. So this is this episode's t-shirt, brought to you by the Bruce Lee Sidekick. There we go. All right. So for the most part, that is what happened, perhaps even around the world. But us humans, we're sometimes prone to start separating things because of personal preference. So that's how people started talking about whose method was better, right? Who really got it from Bruce, right? That was an expression that you would hear sometimes. Who was teaching what he, as in Bruce Lee, taught? Who was really teaching what he really taught, right? As well as who was this was an incredible one. Who was the legitimate heir to the system, the legitimate inheritor, right, of the system? And then there was always the one of, well, what would Bruce Lee have done, right? So I think that arguments can be made for just about any side of this debate, right? Bruce Lee was good. He trained certain things in certain ways. Some people were there when he trained it. He showed it to them or shared it with them. And so their idea was, well, I'm going to do things to the best of my ability the way that Bruce Lee did them. On the other hand, you can say that Bruce Lee became good by looking at different things and extracting what he deemed efficient from these things. So let's do what he did by going through the same process, right? Either way, you're going to come out. As a better individual, regardless of the approach that you take, right? So both are valid. You can choose one, you can choose both, or maybe you find another approach out there, right? Anyhow, you get my point, right? So now let's talk today about a little bit about attempts to organize Jeet Kune Do. All right, and I bring this up solely because I think that it's doubtful that anything will grow exponentially without some attempt to organize it in some way, right? But Bruce Lee is known for having said something like, Jeet Kune Do is not an organization of which one can be a member, right? So perhaps some people have taken that sentiment to heart and have resisted any and all attempts to organize Jeet Kune Do in some form or fashion, right? I think it might be important to remember that in that era of the mid to late 60s and the early 70s, right, there was a lot of, let's call it radicalism, right, going on in the world. And Jeet Kune Do can be considered kind of the radical approach at that time to martial art training. So perhaps, I wasn't there, right, so I can only conjecture, perhaps Bruce Lee didn't want anything to do with any way that the traditional arts had been organized and or promoted. So if they were doing things in this particular way, maybe he was just anti that establishment, and so he didn't want Jeet Kune Do to be organized in a similar way, right? But as we know, things change, times change, right? And so for a while there was something called the Jeet Kune Do Society, and then years later the Jeet Kune Do nucleus came into being. Right, this was January 1996. There were about 20 people, mostly people who had trained directly with Bruce Lee, and then there were a few high-level second-generation students, right? Students of Sifu Dan Inosanto and also of Sifu Ted Wong, right? I think it was 2 days that they gathered for, and so the whole idea was to discuss the preservation and the perpetuation of the art and science known as Jeet Kune Do, right? As far as the setup, it was non-profit. The official group name was the Junfan Jeet Kune Do Nucleus, right? I attended one of their events. This was 2008. It was the 35th anniversary of Bruce Lee's passing, so it was held in Seattle. It was quite cool, right? The training was cool. The eating part was really cool. But then there was also the road trip, the visit to Cedro Bruce's gravesite at Lakeview Cemetery, right? During the time that the nucleus was around, they even produced the official Bruce Lee magazine, copies of which you can find still online, like at eBay and what have you. But even with all that activity, we've got the seminar thing, we've got the Jeet Kune Do nucleus and all that. It still doesn't seem, or didn't seem, as if Jeet Kune Do made it into the mainstream and maintained its position in the mainstream, right? So by comparison, Taekwondo is probably still as popular as it's always been. Maybe that's because it is an Olympic sport, right? So it will always have its adherents. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came onto the scene 25 odd years ago and blew up. Maybe it's because it has its own competition organization for competition in the UFC or what have you, or MMA or what have you. Krav Maga is something that has come up and become very popular, very well known. It's a staple almost in Hollywood. Maybe that's because in the beginning, at least as far as I know, in the USA, there was a central organizing body for Krav Maga, right? So the question then is Jeet Kune Do in and of itself not commercially viable, commercially less appealing than these other things, right? Or is it simply because it was the first and perhaps the only art that came onto the scene with a built-in philosophy that that preached expansiveness and transcendence, right? So my good friend Cass Magda, right? If you look up the Inasano Magda demo, I think that's the title of it. It's on the YouTube at the Miami Jeet Kune channel. So if you look that up, you'll see a clip where Cass says something like, Kali is a very intuitive art. And to try to teach someone his own intuition is not an easy thing, right? So, in my opinion, he could as well have been talking about the art and philosophy of Jeet Kune when he said that. It's intuitive and transcendent, and to teach someone his or her own transcendence or his or her own intuition is definitely not an easy thing, right? I should have told you at the beginning this was going to be a rather short broadcast today, because next week we will delve more into the philosophical aspects of Jeet Kune, but I didn't have time to dive deep into that and prepare a really good show for you. So we'll cut this one today a little bit shorter, and then next week we'll delve into that. But I'll leave you on this note of the commercial viability of Jeet Kune. I'll leave you with this. This Friday, 4 p.m. I think it is, we have the episode 2 of the Jeet Kune Dialogues. And this week I'll be talking with my Jeet Kune brother, Sifu Neil Coliff from American Dragon in Coral Springs, Florida. Right, Neil's one of the more successful JKD instructors out there. He's been doing it for a while, so we'll pick his brain and see what we can get out of that, and then maybe we'll have something from that discussion to contribute to next Wednesday's broadcast, where let's say we'll title it tentatively philosophical aspects of Jeet Kune, right? I might change that by the time we come around to that. All right, so that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Feel free to comment, like, and share this video with all your martial art and non-martial art colleagues. The I Love Jeet Kune YouTube channel is coming, as well as the I Love Jeet Kune SoundCloud audio channel, so you'll be able to listen to stuff at a later date. And of course, check out volume 1 of the I Love Jeet Kune quick skills series at ilovejeetkune.com. Okay, so that's it. Until next time, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, signing off. Take care.